My name is Gerald Szames, my legal name.
How do you spell it?
Gerald, Gerald, and my last name I'll spell S as in Sam, Z as in zebra, A, M as in Mary, E, S, pronounced Szames. I was born 2 weeks before Purim, about 1937, which I decided on April 15th, 1937. I was born in Lutsk, Poland. At that time it was Poland, now it's in the Ukraine. And I was born in a hospital in Lutsk. And the only memorable thing that mother knew about that was I was the only boy, and there were 9 girls that were born that day. And I was the only one that was over 10 pounds. So that's the way it was. I was born in a hospital, the only one in my family. And mainly because my mother was ill during my pregnancy, through her pregnancy. So she had to go to the hospital, which was 30 miles away from our town. The town that I was from is Trochenbrod, Poland. Now it's in the Ukraine. The Polish name for that city was Sofiówka. But the Jews, it was a Jewish town, about 2,500 people. All Jews except the postman and the policeman that mother said. We were all, everybody else was Jewish. I had an older brother, Ervin Szames, and an older sister, about 1 year older than my brother, Fega Szames. She got married to a Greenblatt, and then she got married to a Rabbi Noble. And both my sister and my brother died. I have 2 younger sisters. My mother remarried after the war. And one of the sisters is Sandra Burstein in Columbus, Ohio. My mother's name was Toiba Katz. And she was born, she said 1910, which I believe. Her exact birthday, I don't know, because she kept on changing her dates. Because when my brother left to go to the Air Force, she took his birthday as the date, which would be October 10th. But she kept, so her birthday was 10-10-10, which was easy. And later on, when I left Columbus, she changed her birthday to 4-15-10. This way she remembers, that's how she wanted to keep remembering us. His name is Shlomo Szames. Our family intermarried a lot. He was a cousin of my mother. And since his dad died when he was, probably 8 or 10, and he had 5 sisters and a mother. So essentially he took care of his family, and he was one of the youngest, I think. But he came over to visit his aunt, which would have been my mother's mother, who was a Szames. And in fact, my name is Yankov Leib Szames. and that was my mother's mother's father. And so she, she was a Szames, and he was a Szames, and the relationship goes, according to my mother, goes back to the foundation of Trochenwald. Evidently, Yaakov Szames, he had two brothers, I forgot their names, was a soldier in the Tsar army. And at one point when he retired, he was given a plot of land that's part of Trochenwald. So I'm assuming that his brothers also got a plot of land there, and somehow that area grew to a Jewish community. And my mother remembers him. She says when she was about 10 years old, she'd remember Yaakov Szames and his wife walking along. There was a river there, hand in hand. And he was over 100 years old then. So that was her memory of him. And Yaakov became very wealthy because people traveling from Kiev to Moscow seemed to go through his land. So he'd be there with a pishka, which would be a can, and they'd have to deposit gold in there. So he became very wealthy. But, wealth is not a permanent thing. He divided up the land with kids, and they each built a house next to each other. And at one time, one of the relatives was cooking something, and the house caught on fire, and most of the properties, everybody's property, just burned down. And then from the richest family in town was the poorest. And that's when my dad was born. It was part of the poorest. His dad, Itzhak Szames, my father's dad, Itzhak Szames, who my brother was named after. He was very, very religious, which the tradition then was every Friday night you go to a mikveh, And it was a very bad winter, and he came home, through the snow and the wind and everything, and he caught pneumonia and died. And that's why my father was, trying to keep the family together. He was the man of the family then.
Tell me your earliest memory that you can remember in the house with your mother and father.
Only my mother. My earliest memory is only of my mother. And
do you have any memory of your father at all?
Yeah, the only memory I have of him, the only memory I have of my father was in 1941 when the Germans were invading and coming to our town, and the Russians were trying to escape. The Russians collected all able men to be put on a train that they would send to the German front so they would have a way to escape, give them more time to escape. And I remember in the morning, he was on the road, to be picked up. He picked me up, kissed me, and he gave me a piece of candy, which was must have been around the time of Passover, because that type of candy is always given in Passover, I found afterwards, even in Europe and in here. And the only thing I remember of him is, his face is a blur. And I asked my brother once, I don't really remember my father's face. And I said, the only thing I remember is he gave me that sucker. And he says, yeah, he gave me the box. So my mother, I remember, I believe before then, because she was sick most of the time, and I remember just walking around, so I must have been maybe 2 years old or so, and I seen her, laying in the bed, so I would have been tall enough to see her over the bed, and she had a lot of pillows and that she was laying on. I was, I guess you'd call it mommy's boy. She was always in my sight. I was always next to her, because I was the youngest, I guess, and so wherever she was, I was. But when there was talk of the ghetto being done, my mother wanted to save us kids, so she took us to a woman that she knew, that it was a small town next to Trochenbad, and she wanted them, to claim it as their own.
Outside of the ghetto.
Oh, this is before the ghetto. This is because she knew it was coming.
When you hear the word ghetto, when you first heard that, do you have any recollection of what that meant to you?
Well, it meant going to the ghetto.
And what was a ghetto back then to you? What was your understanding?
My understanding of the ghetto is there were three houses at the end of town that was cordoned off, and that's where they're going to put all the rest of the Jews in. On the way going there, they killed off most of them. So, they had, and those three houses were filled. There's no space, but every time.
What size of houses are we talking about? Like, how many people would fit in these houses?
I can't answer. I remember the walk going down there. The walk was traumatic.
Did you see people die?
Yes.
On the site? Okay, explain this to us.
Well, we were hiding underneath the house that my mother built, a cellar, so we could hide.
Your mother built a cellar?
Well, she paid to get it built.
She had a cellar built?
Built for us to hide. Again, my mother tried to get the kids away so they would be safe into a Polish home.
Do you remember the weather? Do you remember it being cold? Do you remember it being hot? Do you remember being hungry? Do you remember what happens if you had to go to the bathroom? What was the description of the cellar?
Oh, I really, other than the fact that my mother says I was there, I really don't. I know where it was because they dug it. As you go into the kitchen down there was a pump, water pump for the water. So they dug underneath that wooden floor, and it wasn't enough space for 4 of us and the rabbi and wife and I believe 5 or 6 kids that were hiding in there. You know, but those, you know, later on I was underground a lot, so it's all the same.
How did you stay occupied?
I really don't know. That's a question I ask myself all the time, because when we were hiding in the woods for 2.5 years, there's 5 children, 5 adults. My sister was the oldest, so she would have been about 7 or 8, and my brother would have been 1 year younger. Then I have a cousin, Rita Katz. She married Rita Hoffman, and she was about 6 months older than I was. And then I have another cousin in Boston that's alive. Actually, we're the only 2 alive out of the 10 people. And she is 6 months younger than me, according to my mother. None of us know our exact birthday.
Do you remember the cellar today? How would you do if you were?
I just remember where it was in the house. I don't really remember how I got into it.
Do you remember what it had? Did it have a refrigerator? Did it have a box, a place to keep things cold? Did it have a stove?
No.
Just in this.
My mother was just trying to hide while that thing blows over, thinking it'll blow over.
Do you remember blankets down there?
No, not that.
Do you remember curling up with people and sleeping?
It would have been shoulder to shoulder. No. It's and I would have been next to my mother. And anyway, we were. First of all, my sister came in, and she started to yell, you know, let me in. So mother went out and got her, took her down that thing, and after a while, somebody else knocked on the door and said, anybody that's hiding better get out, because later on, if they find anybody, they're going to kill him and then burn the house down. So we all went out. My memory going up into the one road.
Do you remember what that person looked like?
The person? No, we never seen him.
Was it a female voice? Or
it was a man. It's somebody that my mother recognized.
Somebody giving her a warning, or somebody who was from the opposition?
No, it was somebody, a Jew that she knows. You know, they all grew up down there.
So giving her a warning.
Yeah, giving her a warning. You better get out, or they're gonna kill everybody anyhow. So we went on the road, and before we went, my mother put everything she thought she would need into a sheet, and she carried it and held me by the other hand. Would have been her right hand. And we were walking, and our next door neighbor happened to be walking behind us, and I guess I must have been crying or whatever, and he took my hand, and I was walking with him, and he was holding my hand, and then he got shot, and so I started crying, and my mother reached back and got me, and we got to the first house, where there were a lot of dead people there. The only other thing that that had an effect on me while walking there was you'd see the soldiers on the other side of the road. Well, there's a road, and then there's a ditch in between to catch all the waters. And on the other side, I seen the soldiers with a rifle and big black German Shepherds. Sort of black and, like a German Shepherd. And the reason that I didn't know I remembered that until I went to the Holocaust Museum in Washington. And, there's all kinds of stuff there. But when I seen a picture of that there, my eyes just started to water. And I don't know, it wasn't really fear. It was just, I wasn't crying out loud, but I couldn't keep like right now, my eyes are watering. But it was profusely, and but anyhow, we got to the, thank you. We got to the first house, and it was, packed with people. So we went to the second house, and my memory there was as we walked through, there's a skylight, or not I see my grandmother and my aunt. She would have been, I think at that time, young, 8, 9, or 10. And mother asked, can we go up there? And she said, no, you can't. It's not safe. You go to the next house. And which we did. But my grandmother, my aunt, and my Zeta, my grandfather, were up there hiding. And when we were in the next house, I don't know how my grandmother or grandfather arranged it, but they got food to us.
These were not the ghetto houses. These were other houses, correct? These were not the three.
Yeah, those are the three.
Those were the three
That's
houses
the ghetto, right?
of the ghetto.
Right.
Only 3 houses.
At that time. Evidently, there was another ghetto later on that mother escaped to that I really don't remember that much, but she talks about it. But while in there, my mother knew it's okay to mill around during the day, but at night we have to hide. So actually that house my mother knew very well because it was a really good friend of my father's. So she knew, every part of the house. And she knew that in the master bedroom there was a dugout underneath the bed. One thing that a Jew couldn't do, well, a lot of things a Jew couldn't do in Poland, one of those things is make leather, because you could sell leather and that was expensive. And so they were doing that underneath that.
Making items out of leather.
First of all, tanning the leather.
Tanning the leather.
Okay, and you get the leather, you put it into one barrel, and that barrel is lye, and that gets all the hair out. And then you put it in another barrel, which is called core, which gives it that brown color, and that finishes off. So there's 2 barrels there. So she thought we could hide there.
And that was underneath the master bedroom.
Bedroom, right.
And how many people would fit in it?
Well, when Mother opened that lid up, there were 2 adults there hiding already in between the barrels. And my mother wanted to put my brother and sister in there, and they said, no, you can't. And she finally won, saying, well, the longer we're out here, somebody's going to find that they're going to kill us all. So either let them in there or we're all going to get killed. So they let my sister in. She was able to fit around the barrel. There was no more space for that. So my brother had to straddle the barrel that had lye on it. And, then...
Did he get hurt from the lye?
Yes, he did.
What happened?
Well, it
burned
burned.
through his skin? It burned through?
It burned his bottom because, he can only stay stiff for some time. And then, I'm not sure of the days or times, but we went out and we hid into a oven. And there was already a woman in there when, Mother just sort of barged in, and we were in that oven. And we did that for a few days, and then...
Describe the oven for me, please. Like if I tried to crawl in your oven right now, I would not fit.
Well, that was a oven that you would bake a lot of things, breads mainly in that.
Did you use wood?
Wood, they're all wood.
Thank you. So it was a wood oven.
It was a wood oven, and...
How many people you think could hide in this?
Well, there was that woman. She was bigger than my mother and I were in there the first few days by ourselves. Then after a while, my brother wasn't able to take it anymore, and he came in. So he was, I was in front, he was behind me whimpering, then my mother and the woman behind her. So there were 4 of us, 2 adults and 2 children.
Do you remember what year?
1941.
Do you remember what month? Was it cold? Was it hot? Do you remember near a holiday?
Well, it was after the Passover.
After Passover. So
Yeah.
it would have been in the spring.
Yeah.
41.
Yeah. And no, it was after Passover. My description of the oven is also my mother's description of the oven. And my memory is it was massive. Well, the whole area was massive because I've been thinking about it last night as maybe rendering some kind of a little drawing. But as you enter it would have been the kitchen area, maybe even family area. You go through a door and it's there. Then on the opposite side of the whole wall, near the end of the house, was the oven part. Well, where the range part, but it was built in. Everything was built in. I'm not sure if it was brick or white, lit, like this. I'm not sure of that. But down there was where you would cook. You'd put wood in there and you'd cook over that thing.
Got it.
The ghetto was another house. Okay.
Where did they do the tanning?
And my dad's friend was doing that underneath his bedroom.
Underneath his bedroom?
Right.
And you hid there?
No, just my brother and sister.
Just your brother and sister.
But Mother had to find a place for me and her.
So you found
So
this in the oven other
And
house.
no, same house.
Same house.
As you walk in and you go down this way, and then the hall this way, and the first bedroom was the master bedroom. Okay, that's where they were.
But this is in the ghetto house?
In the ghetto. We're in the ghetto already. We're not my
Okay.
house anymore.
So what happened was, to clarify, your brother and sister were in a place that was underneath your father's friend's home where they did tanning.
Right, same
in the
house.
cellar.
Yeah, that was the ghetto. We were in the third house of the ghetto.
Now you went into the third house of the
No,
ghetto.
no. This is in the third house of
In
the
the
ghetto.
third house of the ghetto was a place for tanning where your brother and
Sister were, my mother had them hide there.
Got it.
Then we went out of that room, and then going back to the where you come in,
Where you come into the main house.
right, that was probably the living room and big kitchen.
What I'm trying to understand, Jerry, when in my picture there's a ghetto.
Right.
How big is the ghetto? You said 3 houses?
Three big?
And
Yeah.
how many people
I don't know.
were in these 3 houses?
Whatever is left after the march.
And so as people came through the ghetto, they were killed, but then the people that were left over ended up going in these homes, and you were one of the, quote, lucky ones.
Right, for a while.
In this home.
And they started killing people out of theirs too.
And they went
during the
into
day.
the home and started killing people.
Well, they'd have them go to work.
They'd say, you're going to work.
You're going to work. Get you on a truck, and they take you to killing fields. The reason I'm saying that is because my mother had to do that during the day.
But your mother came home.
But she came home. What she was, which was a good, well,
But what I'm trying to picture, the Nazis have this 3 ghetto homes, and you're hiding. So if they knew about the homes, why would you be hiding?
during the day, because my mother felt it's not safe to be found
For you to be seen. So
during the day,
So you stayed in an oven
just during the night,
during the night.
Right.
And where were you during the day?
milling around.
Milling around, staying active.
And a few of those days, my mother was taken, and that's how she knew that her mother and sister were killed, is because her job was to, they'd go to a killing field, they'd take all their clothes off, they were killed, somebody else would bury them, but her job was to sort out, the items, because that went back to the German front.
And how far was that from where the ghetto houses were?
I really don't know, but I don't think it was far.
Do you ever remember going to a killing field?
Oh no. We were no. My brother and sister and I during it.
What kept you occupied in the home? What things do you remember doing? Because you were hiding at night, sleeping in these ovens, but then in the daytime, did the Nazis come in the daytime and see who was in the house, or nobody came?
Oh yeah. There was no problem during the day.
No problem during the day.
Yeah, they did the killing at night, except they'd take people out and they'd kill them, and then my mother was one of them that was sorting it.
Do you remember new people coming into the home all the time?
No.
I mean, when you have it, when I have this picture of a village.
Yeah.
And you've got all these people in a village, and now all of a sudden, you get it down to 3 houses, and then all these people have been killed, but now you're in a home.
All that's left are old people and children.
All
and
that's
women.
left is old people,
Women and children.
women and children in the 3 homes.
A lot of them were killed on the way.
Got it.
A lot of them were killed on the way. That's
Why?
all. That's all that mother was talking about. See, my memory is not my own memory. It's because I was always with my mother, and anybody that would ask her, she'd review it over and
What you
over and
heard.
over.
Right.
So the description of all those descriptions are her also descriptions.
What do you remember eating?
After, well, there's part of the story of the oven. Afterwards, there was one girl that tried to hide at night, and she tried to hide on top of that stove.
On top of the stove.
Yeah, because behind that thing was there was a chimney, so there was a little space there. She tried to get there, and she knocked some pans down, pans,
Did
dishes and stuff.
anybody use the stove for cooking at all during that time?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Don't remember. No.
Where did you go to the bathroom?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
No.
Um,
Those are one of the things. There's only one memory of going to the bathroom, and that was my brother.
do you how long a period was this for?
I
Was it a day, a week, a month, a year?
I would think it was maybe a week or more, because we would have been in the oven for a few days, and then after the oven, because in the oven down there, my brother came in because he was in pain. He was all red on the
From
bottom
the lye.
from the lye, and he's there whimpering, and this girl came. She was, because she made a ruckus, she tried to get in with us, and there was no room. So then she went on top of the stove and made a racket, hit a pan or something, and a soldier came in and shot her. And then he started to look around, and
He shot her.
He shot her, first. And then he opened the oven up, and he seen us and made us get out. And he was gonna.
And in the oven was you and your mother and
And
your
the
brother?
and the one. And at first he said, "Tell us to get our hands up and face the wall." And my mother started to beg him, "I have gold, I have gold." So, she had it sewed into her pants, underwear. And she was trying to undo that, and she wasn't able to, and he came with a knife and ripped it open and got the gold and told us, "Go back in there, I won't tell anybody."
Go back in the oven.
In the oven, yeah. And so went back, the woman went back, and my mother said, "No, he's going to send his friends in." So he made my brother go back into that barrel of lye,
He made your brother go back.
My mother,
Your mother made your brother go back into the barrel of lye
yeah, to hide.
to hide.
What else are you going to do? And then she's trying to find a place for us, for me and her, mainly for me. And so we walked down that hall, and that's let's call it a patio. It's covered, but it's there's ground there, dirt. And so, and there's also a that I remember is a sewing machine at the end of that thing. So she digs a little grave for me and covers it up with straw and that was around there. And she wants to go away, and I grab her and start crying, the one letter, wouldn't let her leave. So she made a place next to me, and we're both laying there. And you asked about my first food. And somehow what I remember, and I really never talked to my mother about it, is I remember somebody knocking, let our heads are here and there's wood there, and somebody knocking down there and saying, Tybal, Tybal, and she recognized him, the voice, and told us where my grandfather gave word to him to tell us where he was hiding in the woods. And she says, do you have anything to eat? And so somehow I remember eating a pickle, and I don't remember how. So that's the only food I remember.
Jerry, you said something to me in the library.
Yeah.
And what I remember distinctly, and I hope I want you to speak extremely freely.
Okay.
But what I remember is you were telling me just how much you cried, and that when you were in the oven, you remember that you were crying?
Yes.
Making a sound, making a cough. And could you elaborate on what it was like as a child? I want to get a picture of you.
Well, the sound.
Did the Nazis discover you because of your crying? What exactly? Can you fill me in on that?
Well, this is something that I sort of remember, but mainly because of my mother's rehashing that over and over to people.
Okay.
We're there hiding, and there's soldiers standing right next to it, because she said she could see his shoes on the bottom. And I started to yell, and she says I was putting down my hand down there, I want water, I want water. And so she alleviated herself and gave me some water. And she thought that was a sign from God that I'm a lucky child. Because, well, that's her interpretation. Because there's no way he could not have heard me yelling. And he didn't hear us. So that was not too long before my brother came in that happened. So she was very, very much believed in God in that, and she thought that God was saving us at that point. But that story she told over and over again. Yeah. It's, for somebody not to hear, me cry, because evidently I had good pipes. I was able to cry real good. And I cried all through the war, I guess. Later on, when we went to the woods, we were hiding in along the way we found a barn My mother thought we'd go in there, and she says there was about 28 Jews in there already hiding. And I would cry, and they'd order her to either leave because my brother and sister and dad, or take me out and put me to sleep under a tree, and some good Polish people would, adopt me. Mainly because I was cute at that time.
You were what?
Cute.
Cute.
Yeah. Sort of blue-eyed and blonde, which was the same as my sister. She was brown eyes, but she was blonde. So we could pass as non-Jews. But my brother was definitely looked like a Jew, And anyway, she tried to put me to sleep, and every time she'd stir, I'd wake up. And after a while, she realized she can't do it, and then she took me and my brother and sister and went into the woods to find her dad.
Outside.
Huh?
Outside in the woods.
Yeah, further. Well, that barn happened to be in the woods too, but this is going further into the woods. And the next thing that I remember was we're walking along, the path is not in the woods. It's sort of an area that doesn't have any trees in it, because I guess my mother knew where she was going. And there's one guy, Tori, got a branch off of a tree and started beating my mother. And
why?
Because she was Jewish. And in her mind, her thought was, first of all, she told us all to run, and my brother and sister ran off, and I kept on holding on to her arm. I wouldn't let go, and he was beating her.
Did you get hit by holding on to her?
No, he was trying to kill her, and what she thought was he was trying to get her into the woods where he would kill her, and she wouldn't. She would, just kept on going. She thought, if he's going to kill me, then these people around there were houses, farmhouses around there that they would see that, and she knew the area, and my grandfather knew the area, so at least she thought they would tell my grandfather what happened. That was her thought. But after a while, one of those homes, a woman came out and started beating on him, and finally, he was gone, and we were able to go meet my grandfather and uncle.
Did you try to hit him?
Huh?
Did you try to hit him?
No, I was just trying to pull my mother. No, I was just, because I was just pulling on her arm. And she kept on telling me to go, run, which I wouldn't do.
What year are we in now? We're in 40 what?
Still 41.
Unreal.
She was collecting, doing all that thing. Anytime she'd find any leather goods or something like that, she'd put it on her. So except, and she got hit on the head, and that hurt. But any place else, she wasn't really hurt because she had a lot of padding on, which later on, was able to barter for food with. She was prepared. And the thing is, well, you know, that's where she found out that her mother was killed, because since the age of 8 and 10, she became the balabusta of the house because her mother was ill, and her grandfather, my great grandfather, came over to teach her how to make bread, you know. So that was the first thing, and as she said, the hardest thing for her to learn is how to hold a broom. Her brothers had to help her, teach her how to hold a broom to be able to sweep. She was the balabusta of the house. She took care of, my grandfather had more land and had people working on the land, and she would be taking care of that. She would taking care of milking the cows and all that kind of stuff from a young age. And reading. She spent a lot of time reading books with her friends. They'd somehow each get books from a library, and then they'd trade with each other. When my father would come over, you know, when they were still both young, he'd like to hear her tell him the stories that she read. They knew each other for a long time. So, you know, she would read the books, and then when he'd come over, he wanted to know, well, what'd you read now? So
did your mother ever tell you the stories she was reading?
Yeah, one story is, she loved the story where the rabbi was failing, his mind was failing. So he decided every night, you know, he'd write down, I put this here and put this here and that, and then he put his hat on the pillow. Shalom Aleichem and when he wakes up in the morning, he checks it all off, and then he can't find his head. She liked that story. And kept on walking. Afterwards, we seen, and it wasn't too long after that, my grandfather and my uncle Gerald, were hiding in the bushes, and they must have seen they must have witnessed all that, and I don't understand why they didn't come to help. But they were wearing, well, with the burlap bags over their heads, so they, you know, wouldn't be recognized, you know. And then they took us to their, you know, dugout. Down there already was, well, my grandfather, my Zeta. He was he came up to my shoulder when I was an adult. So he was a little guy. And his two sons, Ben, who was younger than my mother, and then Shlomo, which was the oldest brother. And also there was my cousin Fran from Boston and her mother, Surah Katz. Surah was married to my mother's youngest brother, and then there's 4 of us. My brother, Irv, Itzhak Szames, Figa Szames, and my mother, Tybal Szames. My grandfather and my uncles dug big graves and covered them with logs or whatever, made it look like nothing was there, you know, just a hole that you could crawl out of. We did that for 2.5 years. The first year, every 2 weeks, we'd move someplace else, because my grandfather thought you can't stay in one place. We had to hide. So there was a lot of them all through the forest that that they dug. After a while, we were able to get back to some that were used before, so we didn't have to.
Did you meet people along the way that did the same thing?
There's another family that Potashes that were doing the same thing, but my grandfather wanted to stay away from it. One thing that he knew that they had was a gun, a rifle, or whatever it is, and my grandfather didn't want to have anything to do with that.
And, but when you think in a 2-year period, do you remember where you went to alleviate? Do you remember where you went to eat? I mean, like, do you, Jerry?
Yeah, to eat, yes. Mother did the cooking.
In the hiding, you remember?
Oh, we only do that when grandfather said it's okay, you know. So.
But you were in a home. You were in a down.
We were in a grave.
You were in a grave. Where does one cook in a grave? And how far down was it? How big was it? Was it 4 feet, 6 feet?
I'm sure that the tallest one would have been my Uncle Sam. And he would have been about my size right now, which is 5'6". I was about 5'7.5". He must have been about 5'7.5" or 5'8". And from the bottom that I think he was able to stand up. I know I was able to stand up, but most of the time when they dug that thing, there was a little bit of a area before the roof or the logs down there. There was a little platform down there. Most of the time I tried to be sitting there, you know, instead of, otherwise we'd be sitting on sort of the bench where, you know, they one long side, you know, they dig further for the feet and they'd have left a place for a bench. Yes, and while there, a lot of people did go through.
We're in a room. Was the cellar bigger than this room or smaller?
Much smaller.
Much smaller. By how much? Would you say that the cellar was 10 feet by what?
3 or 4 feet.
Wow. So 3 feet by 8 feet.
Yeah.
And how many people are in this?
5 adults and 5 children. And well, after about a year, my Uncle Sam was able. The partisans were going through, and he decided to go with the partisans. He had a little bit disagreement with his dad, and because being very religious and that, and when you don't talk back to your dad.
Mm-hmm. What does this do to your mind? Like, do you remember any of that as far as, I mean, a year goes by, you're 8 years old, do you remember, I mean, if anybody's going to answer this, it's going to be you because you went through it.
Well, the things you remember, there were a few people going through that they knew. You know, they're sort of stumbling through the woods trying to escape. And one of them was somebody my mother knew real well. In fact, the whole family knew him. And we took him in. It was winter time. And I don't think, it must have been a year later because I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Uncle Sam was still with us or not. And so we took him in, or mother and grandfather, and he's sitting next to mother there. And one of the part-time, one of our things that we always did is pick lice, you know, our bodies. What else are you going to do? And so he was much older. He probably was grandfather's age. And so we're picking lice and that. And then mother says, "No, I'll help you pick the lice." And he opened his shirt and he was all covered. And they died. And the reason I remember seeing his chest, and then they put him, there's a little hole to go through to get out of the grave. So they just put him right in front, And I guess there was a big storm or ice. Everything was frozen. He was frozen for the next few days, and for us to get out, we had to climb over him until they were able to bury him.
But you had lice on you.
Oh, everybody did.
Everybody. You just had it.
He was just covered with it, and did he have other conditions too? No. We had, while there, we had every imaginable, mother tell us we had typhus, we had this, we had TB, every disease we had.
How do you pass time?
I don't know. I don't really know how we did that. I really don't, because I know with my kids and seeing other kids, you can't keep them down. And I'm sure that I had something to do with it with my two younger, my cousins, Rita and Fran, because they seen how I was handled and I cried. They probably knew not to cry.
You told me that you cried quite a bit.
Yes.
What did Mom do when you were crying so much?
It's not Mom. Every time every 2 weeks we had to move. And for some reason, we had to move now. It's not,
Like, okay, that's it, we're out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, for some reason, I just sat down and cried. And so one time, my grandfather, took a belt. Couldn't have been a belt because any letter they would have already. Mother calls it a belt, but it would have been a rope that he kept his pants up with. And he put it on my neck and tied it to a branch. And my uncle, dragged my mother away, and finally she was able to get away and take me down. And then the next time, that was quite a while later, because that place had a well, that they dug for water, so we must have been there a few times already. And as they took off, I'm sitting next to the well just crying. And I see my uncle running towards me, and I sort of thought he was coming for me. And he kicked me. And I just flipped into the well. And somehow there was a root that was growing out, and I was able to grab it, so I didn't fall into the water. But I was still yelling and crying, and my mother was able to break away again.
How deep was that?
Well, we'd let a rope down for actually we did all the cooking with they found a German steel helmet at the beginning, and that's where we did all the cooking, and that's used that to, get water. My brother and I would do that. It was deep. No, I was nowhere near the water.
But if you'd have fallen in, that would have been it.
Yeah, well.
But you caught a branch.
Yeah.
And if you're down the well, if you're going down a well and you caught this branch that was growing.
Yeah.
How did they get you? How deep was that branch?
Not far. No.
Not far.
No, my mother was able.
And she was able to reach in.
Yeah, and pick me up. Yeah. No,
did your mother have words with her brother after that?
Well, she went to her brother and her dad, and at that point she said, "The only reason we're all alive is because of me." And they left me alone after that. That's the last time that my crying had.
The only reason you're alive.
We're all alive.
We're all alive. This is your mother saying, is because of me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because of Yankel.
Did he ever lay a hand on you again?
I guess foot and like slapping around. No, never like that. No, it just that.
When did he pass?
In I think 1975.
So did you have a relationship with him?
Oh yeah.
Were you close to him?
Oh yes.
Did he ever apologize, or that was just
the
worst part of your life was left behind and you moved on?
No, we were every holiday that we were all together, and with my uncle and with him. Actually, one time I came back there for a holiday, and I was, it was my sister's house, and my grandfather came up to me and says, in Yiddish, "Do you remember when I hung you?" And I said yes. This is
your grandfather or your uncle?
My grandfather.
Your grandfather, okay. Do you remember when I hung you?
And he just wanted to know. I don't know why at that time. And I said yes. And he sort of looked at me and walked away. And that same evening, the same place, my uncle came up to me and said, "Do you remember when I drowned you?" He considered drowning me. Mm-hmm. I said yes. And that, he just walked away.
Did they apologize? Or do you think by recalling it was their way of apologizing?
Yeah, I think they just wanted to know if I remembered. So it must have bothered them a lot, and that just wanted to know. And
do you remember the rope on your neck?
No, I just remember my mother talking about it.
Do you remember holding on to a branch?
Yes, but I remember more being kicked.
By
my uncle.
By your uncle.
Yeah. Well, I remember him running towards me more, and then all of a sudden, I'm falling down. There's a whole family they're trying to save, and I crying all the time. It's a problem. I mean, he's at that time my Uncle Sam wasn't there anymore. So there's 9 people all together. So if I'm the problem, then at least he saves 8.
If you were to write a book, what would the title of your book be?
Probably The Lucky One. That's what my mother called me.
What?
The Lucky Child.
The Lucky Child. And you were lucky because?
According to my mother, because of God.
Because?
Because of God. Because
God?
her belief in God.
And there were miracles in this hell, correct?
Yeah.
Your miracles were?
Well, it started with me crying and the guy not being able to hear it, which she thought was, and then she was ordered to get rid of me, and she couldn't,
And there's a rope on your neck that didn't work, and a branch that you held on to. Any other miracles?
Yeah, there's a few. The one thing that my mother, as she was cooking, one day, she, as the birds flew by, she'd say, fegele, fegele, which is birds. Yeah. What will be? Okay. And so she was cooking something, really didn't have much. And a duck fell right where she was.
A duck fell.
Yeah. Well, she called it a gunce. A gunce is really
A goose?
A goose. Fell down where she was, and that's what we ate that day.
It fell and was dead, or just kind of like landed and she...
There must have been a bird or an eagle or whatever that had it, and it dropped it.
Out of its mouth or something. Okay.
And it dropped right next to her. So, but as far as food, I never went with that, but my brother Irv and my uncle and grandfather Zeta, on a regular basis, they'd go out. First, they were able to barter for food with the leather goods and things like that. After a while, we didn't have any more, number one. And number two is some of those places, especially the one that my grandfather knew real well, he said, "This is the last time." And he had a gun with him. He said, "Next time you come here, I'm going to have to use it." In other words, he's telling my grandfather, "Don't want you to come here anymore." They were scared too, because if the Germans knew that they were helping Jews, they would get killed too, and a lot of them did. So what they had to do after that was steal. So we would, most of the time, they'd come back, everybody has pigs and that, and so on the outside, scraps of food that they don't eat, they put in the pig things. And during time that where there's potatoes, they go and get some potatoes, but they wouldn't do it in one place. They take a little bit from here, a little bit from there, so nobody would really know that this is, somebody's around there. And what I remember about eating is most of the time it would be potato peels. And when we would have a fire, my brother would teach me, get a twig out of a branch, and we'd sort of roast the potato things, and eat that. That was good. But other than that, it would be soup with, I don't know, with marmalade.
What was your taste of freedom? What was it like from what day would you say that you were free? And what was it like the day before? And then what happened? And what year?
Well, 1944, it was in the summer or late summer. We were hiding in the graves, and there's a lot of noise, and we went out we went out of the grave.
What
during
kind
the
of
day.
noise?
Airplane,
Okay.
yeah. And I seen, we would all
What did
seen.
the airplanes look like?
Well, there's one airplane that had a double fuselage, which usually they use to transport goods, I guess, and two little planes behind it, and they shot down that one plane.
And you saw that?
Yeah,
Like,
it was almost overhead, but further down by that time. And my grandfather decided, a couple of days later to see what it was about. So he went in that direction. And finally he got to the place, and he was surrounded by the Russian army, and they were going to kill him. I don't know why. They set it up in front of a tree with the hands up, That's always the story. Maybe they were watching the movies, I don't know. But my grandfather heard him speaking in Russian. And so he starts yelling, I'm a Jew, I'm a Jew. And so he had to prove it by dropping his pants. And then he came running back to us and said, the war is over, the war is over. That was, memorable.
and where did you go? The war is over.
Well,
Nazis.
yeah. No, we didn't go anyplace because he didn't trust. So I think Mother said we waited for about a couple months before we went into a town.
You were going to a town, and were you able to return back to a home?
Oh, there's no, our home was, everything was burned out.
Everything was burned out.
Yeah. No. So we were there. In fact, I really don't remember how long, but I went to first grade in Russian school. And that was, learn Russian.
First grade.
First grade.
And you're how old?
1944, so
10?
no,
When were you
7.
born?
7.
7, okay.
1944, 7. And thing I learned pretty well. At least I learned the Russian alphabet, able to, because my mother was writing letters all the time, so she asked if I wanted to write a letter to my Uncle Sam. And I just said, I wrote, I don't know what I wrote, but I wrote something.
In Russian?
In Russian, yeah.
Let me back up a little bit, Jerry. When you were growing up, did you sense anti-Semitism? Or no, it was when the Germans came in, correct? Did your next door neighbors have a thing about people that were Jewish?
Oh, we were all Jewish.
Yeah, you were all Jewish.
Yeah, well, yeah, Mother explains that and there were always times where, because this is a Jewish town, some neighboring hooligans would come in and, they wouldn't let especially young girls being out on the weekends by themselves. That was before the war.
That was before the war, and that was just a protocol, but it had nothing to do with being Jewish.
They just went into a Jewish town. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were all Jewish in that town.
How did you come to America? Okay, you taste freedom. You're with your family. You came with your mom here, or you came later on. What year did you come to the United States?
Well, 1940, 45.
You're 10,
We
11, 12.
Yeah, when we went out of the woods, we were in one town. Then grandfather decided we wanted to go back to Poland. So we went to a town called Bytom, Poland, which is west of Moscow. And we were there, and while there, my mother found that there was a lot of kibbutzim wanting to go to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And they especially wanted to take orphans.
And who would you talk to? Like the war is over, and how do you say, listen, I got to get out of here. How do I go to a kibbutz? Where's money? Where's food? I mean, how do you survive that?
Well, you have to be able to. My mother was good in baking, and so she would bake, and there was always Russian soldiers and Polish soldiers coming in.
And you would sell it to them?
And yeah, and we would sell it to that. I know one time.
What was it that she baked?
Huh?
What did she bake?
Little buns,
Buns.
what I guess you'd call it buns.
How many at a time could she bake?
A lot. We had an apartment, and she'd bake.
Rolling of the bread and everything?
Yeah, no, she's been doing it since the age of about 8. She learned how to do it. So, and
Did you learn?
No.
You never tried baking with her?
No. She did all that. She did the cooking. She did everything, and so I didn't have to.
Describe your mother in one word.
Amazing, happy person.
Happy.
Well, the word is optimistic.
Optimistic.
Yeah, she'd
You
be.
You came to America with her, correct?
Yeah, came here November 1947, just before Thanksgiving.
She married here, or she married?
She married before. My brother, sister, and I went with a kibbutz. She signed us up for a kibbutz to go to Israel. There were 2 leaders for our kibbutz that was getting us over there, and one of them I called Dad in Yiddish, So, and he used me as his mascot or whatever, because going from town to town, you need money, you need this. Which he'd show up with me, and he'd be able to get things to go to the next place. So I was sort of. So I always had somebody that's taking care of me, or being with me. I had my brother or sister and him. So, but in the meantime, there was a time in Poland where they allowed. I think that was in 1945 or 46. They allowed the Jews to get out of, and anybody wanted to get out of Poland could. So
But who would take you?
they went to Austria, to Bindermichel, Austria, to a DP camp. How they did that, I don't know, but I think grandfather, because the whole family went there. And so she was in Bindermichel, and meanwhile, my uncles and grandfather got married while they were still in Bytom. And then when they got to Bindermichel, that because my mother wasn't married yet, and she was trying to find us, and trying
But you're
to.
still all together.
Huh?
You're all together, or you're in Israel?
I never got to Israel.
You never got to Israel.
I never got to Israel.
You were
We went from place to place every time. We get different identities and that, and spending most of the time in kettle cars going from town to town.
And how did you pay for these cattle cars, or were they free?
That's what my dad did. Who I called my dad. That they were able to.
This is your stepfather.
No.
Oh, this particular person who helped you.
Yeah, he was. They were able to. All I know is from every time they'd give you a new piece of paper, and with the instructions, anybody talks to you, you're done. You don't understand it. You can't say a word. We were not allowed to say a word.
You don't say anything. You just hand a piece of paper, and you go from cattle cart. And how do you know where you're going from cattle cart to cattle cart? How do you know where it stops?
We didn't, but they did.
They did.
He did.
He did.
Yeah. Each time he's trying to get a boat or somebody that'll take us. Finally, my mother, after she remarried.
She married in Poland.
She married in Austria.
In Austria?
Been in a DP camp.
In what year?
Would have been, I think, 1946.
Okay.
Yeah, because she arranged the marriage of her oldest brother in Poland.
And your mom's a miracle.
Okay. So that was while they were in Poland. But then when they got to Bindermichel, he was a policeman in Bindermichel, her brother. And there's another policeman there, Baruch Bernstein, who then became my stepfather. So he introduced it to my mother, and so they married. Mainly because she wanted to get the family back together. She was looking for us all the time. That she was there. She was looking for us. Finally, she found out where we were. She came, and she was going to take us back. But brother and sister wouldn't go. They wanted to go to Israel. I didn't know any better or anything, but my mother's there, and she says, "Well, tonight we're gonna stay with your sister's house room." The boys and girls were in different buildings, so I went down there, and then before I knew it, I was carried across the border into Austria from Germany. Yeah, I didn't have to walk, because the guy that was taking us, carried me on his shoulders, because I was so cute.
Where did you? Maybe that's the title of your book, Because I Was So Cute. Where did your education come from? When did you realize that you could soak in information to become the pharmacist you became?
No, I did.
How did you catch up on your education?
No, when I came here, actually I was
in Ohio, right?
Yeah. Well, even when I was in the kibbutz, I was in the first grade, learning Hebrew, and
so you went to Israel, being in a kibbutz.
No, kibbutz. It's still a kibbutz, trying to get to the kibbutz in Israel.
Okay.
The kibbutz was in Israel, but this was
the DP in Austria.
No, this was, the kibbutz was sending out people to gather orphans to bring back to Israel into the kibbutz.
But you never did.
I didn't. My brother and sister finally were able, in 1948, they were on the Exodus boat, and they finally landed in Haifa and put on another ship. And
Have you
went,
ever been to Israel?
yeah, went there with my wife. And no, but
You met your wife in United States,
Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah,
Nice Jewish girl.
nice Jewish girl. Yeah. So
Did her family have anything in the Holocaust?
yeah, she was born 1942, and what's his name, Wallenberg, the Swedish ambassador, was able to put them in a house as a embassy and saved them from being killed. So no, that yeah, and she was always, you know, her mom
How old
talked
was she
about her.
How old was she when you met?
She was still 15.
And how old was she when you got married?
17. Yeah. I needed to have, because to get licensed, you needed her, you know, a signature from a parent. So I had to take my mother-in-law and her to the courthouse, which I did.
And you married her when she was 17?
Yeah,
And you were how old?
5 years older. So I was, 22. Yeah, and it worked out good. Yeah, because
And you had graduated from high school?
but when I met her, I was almost ready. I got my first degree, biological sciences, in college. I was already ready to graduate college when I met her.
Was there one particular, how many graves do you think you were in?
I don't know. Every 2 weeks, we moved again and again, so it would have been a lot. Near
Were
the
there any close calls where somebody saw you going into the grave?
no.
Did they
Although
have
we-
lids, or
Huh?
they were just open pits?
Oh no. It was covered. It was covered with either moss or leaves or something. So the main thing that my grandfather was always worried about, I remember, is having a cow graze in the woods. You know, because the cow would fall right through us. You know.
Did that ever happen?
No. But that was, and you know, when it rained, you know, we got flooded. When it snowed, you know, that's on the outside.
Right. What did you do when?
Well, we're underneath there. We're okay. It just when we go out, and the main thing is, you know, you always, you know, you didn't have shoes, so you had, you know, somehow my grandfather and mother found little pieces of cloth, so we'd put some bark underneath there and just tie it around there. Those are your shoes you wear wintertime and summertime. And I know one time my brother, it was wintertime, and you know, he got out of the grave and there's snow there, and he says, well, if you want to drink, all you have to do is you take your, you know, one of the shoes off, put the snow in there, and just
Yeah.
squeeze it.
But when you went to the bathroom, for instance, you went outside.
Oh
You
yeah,
got out of the grave, went outside, did your deal,
yeah,
come back.
yeah.
And food. I mean, just the lack of food.
Well, they were out almost quite often
But do
getting
you
food.
remember what it was that you were eating? Was it
Most of-
vegetables?
Most of the time was the slop from the.
Slop from the pigs?
Yeah, one time we did eat a whole pig because one farmhouse got bombed, and my grandfather and uncle found a dead pig there and brought it back, and you know, so we had that for a while. I mean, you had to eat, and you know, so
Are there foods you avoid today?
I'm not sure. It's
If
certain.
you and I went out to dinner, what would you not order?
I guess certain kind of clams or things like that, or yeah, things that, what is it? The red stuff that's expensive.
Caviar.
No, well, I never tasted that.
The red lobster?
Lobster, yeah. Anything like
The red
that.
thing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Somehow, my mother had a lot of influence on me. In fact, I married my wife because of my mother, because she, when I met I was working with my mother and selling fruits and vegetables, and a friend of ours came by and said, she was a Hungarian, said, gee, I have a nice girl I'd like you to meet, and maybe you could introduce her to some of your friends, which...
She was 15.
Yeah. Well, I was 22, so I was ready to graduate.
And this is when she was 15?
Yeah. This is... yeah.
Did your mother love her?
Oh, she liked her. Yeah.
Did you live with your mom in the United States? Did she live with you?
I lived with my mom. We got married in 59, and in 1962, she was already, that's when she got pregnant, and my mother remarried, and so, I moved out into an apartment because I wasn't needed anymore. I was needed for business purposes. The only way my mother would be able to survive was to be able to sell fruits and vegetables, and I had to be there.
Your mother only remarried once?
No, she remarried 3 times.
3 times?
No,
so,
remarried twice.
So
Yeah.
your husband, your father, and then...
Brock Bernstein, he died in 1956.
He died in 56, and then your mother married again?
Yeah.
To an American?
No, essentially he...
Did you get along with him?
Did he or he?
Did you get along with him?
Yeah, but I thought she could have done better.
And your mom worked. I mean, your mom was just a go-getter.
She worked everybody. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays was when we worked. And in between, even before, the biggest day was Saturday. Before we had to leave Saturday morning, she was thrown up. She was sick. But it's time to go to work. Until after work, 24 hours later, she was okay. And then she was ill again.
Gerald, take a deep breath on this question. If your mom were here today, what would you want to tell her?
Well, she knows I love her, and she loves me. So, I really would have liked to have her abilities, her foresight and things like that. Nothing would stop her when she had to do something. It would get done. She was writing to families in Israel and Europe and America and all over. She'd know the addresses. I don't even remember my kid's address. I have to look at my phone to see that.
Jerry, I'm going to leave you with one final thought, and the final thought has to do with students learning the Holocaust in education. If students are watching this interview, what final thought do you have, or final thoughts, in making sure that students hear survivors and the importance of it?
I think, like I always think, number one, they should consider themselves very lucky to be born in the United States. And know their freedom and know how to keep it. You are much more free here than any place else, no matter what else anybody else will tell you. But you have to be cautious and know you want to keep on existing. The Jews have been around for a long time, and they will be around for a long time. But sometimes it might take more effort. But when you have to fight, you fight. When you have to hide, you hide. My grandfather kept us alive, knowing that he couldn't fight the German army. He knew the only way we could survive is by staying out of their way. That's one option. And if you have the opportunity for any other option, that might be best for you. But you have to make your own decision. And you will. Know that you will survive.